Hello Magic the Gathering players, this is Mills from MTG, back again with some Modern on Budget. Today is Temur Crashcade. If you don't know the deck, you win through Crashing Footfalls, which can't be hard casted because it doesn't have a cost, but it has to spend for a green, so you'll put it out, and then 4 upkeeps later, you'll cast it for free. But that's not the only way we can cast this. You'll get 2 Rhinos for it with Trample, and those are surprisingly hard to deal with. But we do have Cascade. And Cascade, since we can't normally cast it, but if we flip over into it and it's lesser mana cost, then yes, we can cast it without paying its mana cost, even though it doesn't have a mana cost. So, Shardless Agent is going to be able to flip over, and since no card in our deck, if you look, 3-3-4-4, 3-3-3-4-4, nothing in our deck is under 3 mana except for Footfalls. So we will always cast Footfalls even with all the other things in our deck. You might think, oh, Dead, Gone, Fire, Ice. Those cards, you count both sides together, so Fire and Ice is technically 4. But we have Shardless Agent. When we cast it, we'll flip over till we get the Rhino, and then we'll get the 2 Rhinos out. Then we also have Violent Outburst, which is an instant, so we can do it at our opponent's end step. That way they can't force a negation it. And if we do that, then when we flip over, we get the Rhinos, and then the next turn we swing in for 8 power that they don't necessarily know, they don't have something to deal with. Where if we do it during our turn, they technically have a turn to deal with it, but Violent Outburst is sort of the more powerful of the 2 Cascade spells. Now to get there, to get to the point where we can do that, if we're not doing that on turn 3, is that we want to delay the game or kill our opponents or interact with our opponents' creatures and threats enough where 4/4 Rhinos can actually make it through. Our first way of doing that is Bonecrusher Giant, which is going to be Stomp. That's going to be a way that we can just deal some extra damage to any target. It can be maybe the final blow to our enemy, or maybe it's going to be what kills their creature. And that's how we get our creatures in. That's how we get our Rhinos in. Then we have Foundation Breaker, which if you don't have a lot of these decks in your meta, then you can swap this out for some other card. If you have Furies or Subtleties, well, Subtlety you'd have to add white, but if you have Furies or anything like that, you can add it in here. I love Foundation Breaker because I play against a lot of Urza Saga decks, whether I play online or in person. This can deal with Urza Saga, it can deal with, it's 2 in the main board, so if you go against Titan, it could deal with their Amulet. It can deal with a lot of different things in the metagame right now, and so being able to just have it main board is something that I very much enjoy to have. Subtlety is a card where you can sort of just prevent something for 1 more turn, or they might just decide it's not worth it and put it on the bottom, so it can essentially act as a counterspell. It's sort of, it's remand, but doesn't draw you a card. And if you're not evoking it, then it actually stays on board as a 3/3 flyer, and that can close up a lot more games than you might think if you're in a stalemate. Next up is Dead and Gone. This is more removal, where it's deal 2 to them or bounce a creature to their hand. This is just, the entire deck is either temporary solutions or permanent solutions, but our permanent solutions are for smaller threats, so for anything big like a Tarmogoyf, we're probably going to try to bounce it to their hand. Fire and Ice, same deal, 2 damage divided among 2, or tap target permanent, draw a card. Now if your opponent, let's say turn 1 land, you're going first, you land, they land, you land, and during their upkeep, you tap down their only land. They either have to have an instant, or they miss out on that the second mana for their turn. They'll still be able to play a land, but they'll have one of their lands be tapped, and they'll lose the mana as phases change. So you can get them out, you can delay them a turn from playing their 2-drop. You can also try to do this too if you suspect they might have Countermagic. You could try to do that. Or you can tap down a creature they have and swing for lethal. You got a worst case scenario, it's a cantrip, but best case scenario, it can really set you forward in the game. Prismarian Command is sort of an attempt at a fix-all. You sort of have a bunch of different things. You have damaged any target, you have filtering through your deck, you have creating a treasure token, you have destroy target artifact. It's artifact destruction, ramp, ways to get to your combo. It's sort of a fill in the blank wherever you need it. Our last card here is Mystical Dispute, and this is going to be in place of Force Negation. Now, I know that people are going to probably make comments on, oh, you need Force Negation in the deck. The fact is, if you just delay your combo one turn, and you have Mystical Dispute up, and you go Violent Outburst, and on their turn they try to counter it, and in response you have that 1 mana open to counter their counter spell with Mystical Dispute, that is a good path if you're playing against blue. So Mystical Dispute is going to be Force of Negation for us. If you have Force of Negation, I highly recommend playing it, but Mystical Dispute does a wondrous job in the playtesting, and I've really enjoyed playing this over the past few days. But that's our main deck. We have our lands, Evolving Wilds, to sort of search out whatever we're finding. We really need certain types of lands. And we have we have each of our basics. We have the temples because we're not necessarily going for the faster route. I mentioned Mystical Dispute on turn 4 with going into Crashing Footfalls. With our temples, you're allowed to take a slower pace at this game. For our sideboard, we have Ashiok for Titan, Graveyard Hate, anything like that. We have Blood Sun as a budget Blood Moon. If you have Blood Moons, you can swap them in. We have Broken Wings as a way to deal with artifacts, enchantments, just that stuff. But also, it can just nix a Murktide Regent. So I chose Broken Wings over one of the other cards that do essentially the same thing because we can get rid of Murktides as well. And then Unwind, counter target non-creature spell, untap up to 3 lands. I sort of saw this as let's say I turn 3, pass turn to you because I'm playing this deck, and I plan on Violent Outbursting during your turn. During your turn, you cast Teferi Time Raveler, who sort of just halts this deck altogether. If I unwind Teferi, then I can untap all of my lands again and still be on track to Violent Outburst during your turn. If you want, you can even swap Mystical Dispute and Unwind main deck sideboard. If you have forces, you'll end up having disputes in the sideboard and then Force of Negation in the main board, but Unwind was a really cool synergy, and I loved playing with it as well. This deck, even as a budget form, it's ridiculous how much 4/4 Rhinos can do just because of their power, toughness, and trample. I look at the metagame and I wonder, is this the best we can do whenever I see this deck? Whenever I play against it, whenever I play test things. But it really just works. So if you like very minimal effort to get something out that is very strong, easily win you the game, this is a deck for you. It's a pretty simple deck to pilot. You can do a lot of different plays with it, but it's overall not the most complicated deck, so it's pretty easy to pick up. If you like it, go ahead and let me know. Let me know down below. For next week, look forward to a Death Shadow list, and I'll see you around. Hope you enjoy the deck.